Hello and welcome back to An Old Man Watches, where today I'm going to be talking about the 1994 video game adaptation Double Dragon. And I'll start with an important public service announcement. If you're the kind of person who loves mind-bogglingly ill-conceived, witless and terrible movies, in other words, a person like me, then you don't need to stick around for this review. You can just get to a streaming service that has Double Dragon and buckle in for the ride of your life. If you're the kind of person who needs more context, however, let's get stuck in. So this film begins with narration telling us about the Double Dragon, a mystic medallion so powerful that in order to prevent it falling into the wrong hands, it was split into two pieces, and each half was then hidden away. One half of the medallion grants power of the body, the other half power of the soul. And as it happens, that latter part has just fallen into exactly the wrong hands it was supposed to be saved from. Those of our narrator, an ultra-wealthy businessman and crime lord who, despite being a white guy, goes by the name Kogashuku. Kogashuku's plan is to find the other half of the amulet and use its powers to take control of New Angeles, the half-flooded city that is all that remains of Los Angeles after the big quake. All of this brings us to the Lee brothers, the perhaps overly cautious Jimmy and his reckless and thoughtless brother Billy. As we meet them, they're in the process of losing a martial arts tournament due to Billy's lack of self-control, and missing out on that prize money will soon be the least of their troubles. You see, not only has the tournament kept them out past curfew, the hour when the New Angeles Police Department abandons the streets to the city's gangs, but a run-in with one such gang alerts Kogashuku to the fact that their guardian, Satori, possesses the second half of the medallion that he has been looking for. Soon, Kogashuku has every gang in the city hot on the Lee's heels. Even with their martial arts skills and the help of the vigilante group known as the Power Corps, can the two brothers really stay ahead of Kogashuku's army of goons long enough to unlock the power of their half of the medallion and thwart the villain's plans? So, Double Dragon was a beat 'em up video game franchise. It's still active today. In fact, the most recent game came out in 2024, but it had its real heyday in amusement arcades of the late 80s and early 90s. Certainly, that is where I encountered it. If you're familiar with those original arcade games, you recall it had a very basic plot outline. Billy's girlfriend gets kidnapped by a gang, and Jimmy and Billy must beat up gang members to get her back. In which case, you may be perplexed by all this mystic medallion stuff and probably the whole half-sunken Los Angeles setting. But to be fair to the film, it seems get multiple magical doodads to defeat a supernatural menace was actually an innovation of the third Double Dragon arcade game back in 1990. So this movie going in that direction is not as left field as it sounds. But it is every bit as goofy as it sounds, because as noted at the top of this video, this is a bewilderingly silly and ill-conceived film. And you don't just have to take my word for it. Critics of the time called it clumsily paced and amateurishly acted. Audiences stayed away in droves. The film recouped only half its budget in ticket sales. And to this day, the Double Dragon movie continues to appear on lists of worst video game movies ever made. And there's good reasons for that. So let's dive in, shall we? The first problem is a simple one. The plot is incoherent. Lots of things happen in this movie, but generally without context, cause, or explanation. Why does Kogashuku punish the failure of his million Obodo by giving him super strength? Why does Obodo not make more of an effort to avoid something that is clearly described as a punishment? Why does Kogashuku not give away any of his other minions the same super strength? Inside the movie universe. I mean, I'm sure in the real world the answer was we don't have enough cash for 2 mutant suits. Why does Kogashuku, who we are told is the richest man in the world, need to recruit gangs to help him? Surely he could simply co-opt the authorities and media like real billionaires do. Why does Kogashuku want the medallion so that he can conquer New Angeles, a city that is half-flooded and barely functional? Why not take over somewhere that's less destroyed? What's stopping him from effectively running the city without the amulet? Why, after an entire movie of the Lees not being able to get the Double Dragon to work, does it suddenly start to do so when Billy throws it away in disgust? Who thought it would be a good idea to have the bad guy actually get both halves of the super powerful magical doodad that he's been searching for the whole movie, and then still manage to lose? Way to undercut your own MacGuffin there, movie. And things not making sense don't just stop at the core narrative. The world building is similarly slapdash. The film establishes that there's a set time of day at which the cops stop patrolling and the gangs take over. If they find you on the streets during that time, you'll have to pay their toll. how does this even work? What kind of gangs are these that they calmly nap all day and then punch in at 7 p.m. on the dot to start work? What kind of gangs are these that they apparently only harass people they see on the streets? We do see store owners closing up their shops with metal barriers and the like, but if no cops are going to respond to an alarm, the gangs have hours and hours to break into these places. Why don't they? Where are the state and federal government in all of this? California's GDP is larger than that of the UK or France, and much of it originates in Los Angeles. That's not something that either layer of government would be likely to forego so easily. The film will not provide a real answer to this question, presumably because it doesn't have one. It just waves the issue away. Also waved away is the fundamental question of how New Angeles really functions at all, given that significant parts of it are underwater and it's apparently subject to genuine acid rain. Or at least so we're told. There's no actual wet weather in this movie, nor is there any evident smog, though this too is called out in dialogue as being life-threateningly bad. Somehow, despite all of these things, New Angeles is still running sufficiently smoothly that it has a thriving tourism industry. None of this makes a lick of sense. Also not making a lick of sense, the Lee's car apparently runs on trash. We see them scooping stuff off the streets and shoving it into a furnace to power the vehicle. If this is true, why is there any trash on the streets to begin with? That stuff is valuable. And why has no one made a mint off this technology? Well, maybe they did. Maybe that's how Kogashuku got all of his money. Because if you can power a car with a couple of sheets of paper and an aerosol can, you've just solved the energy crisis. So yeah, the movie is full of unexplained and incoherent elements. And to be frank, for me, that is part of its charm. Also part of its charm is it has some fun design work. The whole film has a very The Road Warrior meets the Warriors vibe, with a dash of Waterworld thrown in. The film has an opening car chase sequence, for instance, that includes two vehicles that could be straight out of a straight-to-video Mad Max knockoff from a decade earlier. The New Angeles gangs, meanwhile, all have the outrageous costumes that very much evoke the style of gangs like the Baseball Furies in The Warriors. There are gangs here who wear high school uniforms, gangs who are leather-clad punks, and even apparently a gang that commits their crimes while riding unicycles. Then we have the set design, like the Power Corps' secret headquarters, a playground/gymnasium filled with rope bridges, trampolines, and a fluorescent green canal. The last of which exists purely for people to get thrown into it during a fight scene. So basically, what I'm saying is that the costumes, vehicles, and sets of this film mostly look like they were designed by a 13-year-old boy hopped up on sugar right after an all-night movie marathon of 80s action, which is an aesthetic that I can get behind. So yeah, Double Dragon is a terrible movie, but I find it to be terrible in a bunch of fun ways. And props to Robert Patrick as the villainous Kogashuku. He's definitely the film's brightest element. Next time, in 1974, Godzilla came face-to-face with his diabolical robotic counterpart, Mechagodzilla. And the new rivalry proved successful enough that it was revisited in the franchise's next film only 1 year later. So I'm going to be looking at both Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla and Terror of Mechagodzilla. But that is next time. Until then, thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you've seen Double Dragon, well, first, wow, how did you find that? Yeah, let me know what you thought of it.